So, what's going on with Joyboy? Cause I'm very confused at this point, and it's all thanks to one Mr. Saint Nerona Imu. This guy has recently got me questioning everything I've assumed about One Piece lore, what actually went down during the First and Second World, and whether Joyboy is even the sun god at all. Like, something's very fishy here. Something smells, Oda. So I'm gonna try and point out all of these strange inconsistencies that just keep popping up everywhere, and then try my best to make heads or tails of all of this. And I'm just gonna say it out top, I want your help, your guys' help in the comments, to really try and help me figure out what the heck is going on. And first off, Imu is feeling just really weird, guys. He's name-dropping people like Dozan, who we've never heard of. He showed up on Elbaf asking where the king was, even though, like, the country hasn't had a king in years, and he should know that, because, well, he manipulated and then lost the last one. He keeps calling Loki Nidhogg, he keeps calling Luffy Nika. It's as though his mind is, like, stuck in these past centuries ago and is, like, seeing all of these characters literally as their predecessors and just looking at all these other characters at, like, meat suits. He sounds like he's kind of taking crazy pills, is what I'm saying here. But the thing is, that's not quite the case, is it? Imu does distinguish between characters like Nefertari Lily and her descendant, Vivi. He carries around copies of Luffy and Blackbeard's wanted poster for stabbing purpose. He knows who these people are, and we also know that he knew Joyboy personally now, whether they were friends or enemies or lovers, I don't care. We even see the flashback panel of Imu and Joyboy together, right? He definitely seems to not conflate Luffy and Joyboy as the same person, even though a lot of figures who also know Joyboy personally, like Emmett and Zunisha, do call Luffy Joyboy. But if that's the case, then why is he only referring to Luffy and Loki as Nika and Nidhogg, respectively? It's actually kind of the same case for the Gorosei. They also refer to Luffy as Nika. I went back and checked several times during the Egghead Island arc. There is exactly one exception where Imu refers to Luffy as Joyboy. Kind of? Maybe not, actually. So it's this scene right here when he killed Saturn, when he releases Saturn from his duties, his reasoning being that, oh, he let Joyboy escape, which at first glance seems to refer to Luffy, but we also have to remember that this is actually directly right after Imu and all of the other Gorosei got a Joyboy hockey blast straight to the dome, courtesy of Emmett's hockey knot. Alright, quick break from a different room with a different shirt, but researching these videos required that I really get in the zone, of course, and I kind of found what helps the most is surrounding myself with pirate visuals, sounds, and vibes. And as someone who works online, this of course all starts with my browser. Thankfully, today's sponsor, Opera GX, has got me covered. Now, no big surprise, I watch a lot of anime, but when my favorite anime is unavailable where I am right now, I do know I can count on Opera GX's built-in VPN. I do a lot of traveling between Europe and Asia. I'm in this video both in Japan and in Germany, and now my browser can do that as well. Opera GX also, really important, features a strong ad blocker, and it also gives me more personalization than ever before with a ton of official and custom anime mods featuring fan-favorite characters like Zoro or Luffy right here. Ah, my sweet little guys. Each comes with customizable themes, music, and sounds to match your style perfectly. This truly is my browser's peak. Also, Opera GX lets you become a multitasking master. With its video pop-out feature, you can keep working or studying without ever having to stop binging your favorite new series of the season or catching up to like all 1,100 episodes of One Piece as we keep adventuring into Elbaf. And unlike the Straw Hats, this is a time skip that won't take 2 years because you'll get all your power-ups in literal seconds with the quick import tool, which will take your browsing history, bookmarks, and cookies from your current browser over to your new and improved experience on Opera GX. Cookies. So let your heart beat loud and shift your web browsing into gear 5th by downloading Opera GX with the link in description. And now, back to that video. No one knew that Emmett had released that knot, and Imu was literally quaking in his boots after feeling Joyboy's hockey specifically suddenly emanating 800 years after he should have been gone, so I think there's a very valid interpretation of this scene where he's actually not not referring to Luffy at all here, but instead referring to somehow these remnants of Joyboy maybe knowing or fearing that Joyboy survived and might have returned. Yeah, you heard me right there. If I take some crazy pills on my own now, I might even go as far as saying that this could be a hint that Imu might know something that we don't, that Joyboy himself could still be very much around out there somewhere, somehow, and was under the impression that he was there personally on Egghead Island, not knowing about the hockey knot, or that by getting that hockey, he could maybe track him down, or some other idea he could be referring specifically to might be Luffy's straw hat. I mean, ever since the hockey knot scene, I've kind of had this little hunch that Luffy's straw hat, if it was once also possessed by Joyboy himself, which, I mean, he had a straw hat, could have a ton of Joyboy's hockey woven into it, just like that hockey knot. I actually made a whole video about that. This one here you can check out after this one. Gonna leave a link in the description. But given that Imu already has a big old identical straw hat in his freezer, is he actually just trying to collect the surviving pieces of his frenemy's will? Again, weird. In any case though, this one exception to calling Luffy Nika might not be an exception at all, and what feels especially weird sometimes timeline-wise is that I've kind of been on the assumption that Nika and Nidhogg are these figures from the first world, right? I assume you think the same probably. And then only in the second world, Joyboy and the War God of Elbaf embodied their spirits with the Devil Fruits, the Nidhogg Fruit, and the Nika Fruit. And now in the third world, it's gonna be Luffy and Loki who have taken it. Sounds all nice and smooth on the surface, but then Nerona Imu, the founder of the world government, guy who knew Joyboy personally and had his address, was definitely alive in the second world when all of that Void Century stuff went down, right? But he's also talking as though he knows Nika and Nidhogg specifically personally too, as if either Imu is just much older than we all initially assumed and goes back all the way to the first world or even before that. Now, one explanation for this could be that Nerona Imu is actually being possessed by another being, a devil from the original One Piece world, who actually did know the original Nika and Nidhogg and is maybe even related to whatever they are. But either way, the comment about them dying just like Dozan, again, another guy, we talked about this in the last video, implies very heavily that he knew Nika and Nidhogg. Or it could be, on the other hand, that he's 100% right to call Luffy and Loki Nika and Nidhogg because those weren't beings. There might just never have been a sun god Nika alive and running around, and there might have never been a giant dragon named Nidhogg. All these beings might just be pure myth, mythical devil fruits, right? And those names are just pretty much titles that the wielders of those legendary devil fruits later take on. And I think what I'm struggling with so much here is that the more I think about it, the more I have the feeling that it might be that all my prior assumptions and headcanon about the bigger One Piece timeline and how the One Piece history kind of is structured might just be completely wrong. Because as we'll see as I keep unraveling these things with you and ask you more questions, it still wouldn't answer all of the weird inconsistencies that keep popping up everywhere around these characters. Because guys, I've now recently been going back, I teased this in the last chapter review here, I've been going back and translating the Harley text from the original Japanese and rereading all the early sections of Elbaf in Japanese. Turns out, I think I actually missed quite a lot. So it's not the first time I'm like translating or reading this in Japanese, but actually diving properly deep into it and like everything that predates the Harley text and like the mural reveal, there's so much there that I kind of overlooked. In fact, I'm pretty sure I might have to just do a full dedicated video sooner or later about revisiting the Harley text altogether, but just for starters for this video, I didn't even realize that the Harley text's actual title can be translated in the original Japanese as the Gospel of Nika or the Law of Nika, as the kanji for Hare are actually the kanji for God, and then for law, rule, like worship, gospel, these two kanji. And Saul obviously also specifically bringing up and showing Rob in the Harley text after talking about all these different myths about the sun god and about how all these different myths have different interpretations in the Elbaf culture as well. So basically, the Harley is the legend of Nika. Now I'm gonna get into all the other juicy details another day, I think, but today I'll just drop something that somehow I missed before, which is the fact that in the Harley text, the second world does not have a sun god, even though it is supposed to be about Nika. The first world, of course, mentions a sun god, again with the weird quotation marks that only the sun god has in the Japanese original. We talked about this before. The third world mentions a sun god doing stuff, and again, the fact that the sun is in quotation marks in both of these kind of makes me think that there might not be an actual sun god at all, but the second world portion of the Harley text just never even mentions a sun god to begin with. Just the sun, which also pops up in the third world. But then the second world is, of course, when Joyboy was supposed to have lived. No, like, he is the central figure of the Void Century after all. Wasn't he the sun god of that era if Luffy is the current one? And if so, why doesn't he then make it into the Harley text if especially we presumably see Joyboy fighting against Imu in the mural that's directly presented to us with the text? Because you see, what the text of the second world actually only references is that the sun, not the sun god, spread the fires of war repeatedly. The word here is bakkari, which in Japanese kind of means doing nothing but or keep doing something. So like the sentence can be kind of translated as the sun did nothing but spread the fires of war. Also that, like the sparks of war, the fires of war, that word also usually is kind of translated in Japanese as like the horrors of war. So it's definitely like, I mean, war not great, but it's like absolutely meant as a negative thing. It's like the sun, not the sun god, the sun kept spreading the horrors of war around the world. Not the sun god, just the sun, which just feels like a very different thing considering that they specifically name the sun god in the first and third world sections. But then the sun only in the second and third, like it's very weird, which kind of leads me to believe that this is actually referring, of course, not to a person or Nika or the sun god, but the forbidden sun itself. Or it could also be a metaphorical sun, like the coming dawn representing a new age as the third world when the sun returns. But then again, a metaphor can spread the horrors of war around the world, I think. And yet another strange point here is that Nika in the mural is attacking the sun that the demon is holding here as well. And if he's the man who killed the sun from the Harley text and not the sun god who killed the sun, shouldn't that then imply that Joyboy isn't the sun god but just a man or something else? It might be the case that the one who's worshipped as a sun god the most, Joyboy, or at least we thought he was, ironically might have been the man who actually killed the sun or the forbidden sun. Also, even in the first world, did you ever notice that the sun god never actually does, like, anything? Look at the Harley and really think about it. The earth god is enraged, the forest god is taming demons, the sea god storms, but all the sun god does in the first world is poof, appear. Is Nika a fraud? Is Joyboy even a real sun god? Am I bad at reading comprehension for just noticing all this like years after it, well, it's almost years at this point after it comes out. And please don't bother answering that rhetorical question, please. Don't hurt my feelings. So all of these things just kind of lead me to a possibility that the mural might actually only be depicting the second world. And I personally just don't necessarily want that to be the case because I've always been on the team right side is the first world, left side is the second world since the beginning, because there's obviously a lot of stuff in the mural that seems to line up pretty well with the first world text of the Harley, but I definitely think it's at least a possibility that's worth discussing and we probably should be discussing at this point. Just to explain myself here, the reason that I've always been convinced that it was the first world on the right side of the mural here is because it features the Hellflame Serpent, which is explicitly mentioned in the first world portion of the Harley text, but there are things that always have kind of given me pause. For starters, we have an advanced ancient civilization that kind of is similar to how Vegapunk would describe the Great Kingdom. We see a giant elephant like Zunisha. We see what appears to be the Noah and the ancient weapons. These are all things that we do know were around and existed in the second world of One Piece. But then the question is, how do we make this all make sense with what we've recently been learning? Because if it's actually Imu who's the demon on the left, does that mean that the crowned figure standing on the elephant there is actually Davy Jones, the former king of the world? Not if you ask Imu, of course, but, you know, seems like he was. Does that mean that the Nidhogg we see here is actually the war god of Elbaf, and that the ancient giant in the battle on the left is maybe just a different guy? I mean, that could make sense, I guess, since he has a spear instead of wielding his hammer, Ragnir. Does that mean that the Hellflame Serpent also is someone using a devil fruit, or that the serpent also showed up in the second world and just wasn't mentioned in that part of the Harley because it was already getting its spotlight in the first world, but it was like a remnant of the first world? You see what I'm saying? And if it is just all showing the second world, which again, you can make all these arguments for it, but then what do we even know about the first One Piece world at all? Nothing except for the Earth God and the Hellflame Serpent, basically. Or is it that figures like Imu and Nika are old enough to have existed in both the first and the second world, and they're just these immortal beings? After all, I've always kind of assumed that there are like thousands of years probably between these worlds, like looking at how places like Arubana are like 4,000 or 5,000 years old, or the tree on Ohara, right? Like thousands of years before the Void Century happened. Like, the Void Century is way closer to the current timeline in Luffy than it ever was to, like, the founding of Alabasta. Can maybe the big calendar switch that happened in One Piece at some point give us some hints here? Again, not really sure. Like, but trying to sort out all of these weird inconsistencies and, like, almost paradoxes, we just keep getting even more questions instead of answers here. And that's assuming that we can even trust the mural in the first place as a source of information, because let's not forget that Ripley specifically suggested that these might just be the drawings of children letting their imaginations run wild, and it might not even depict anything real. I don't necessarily think that's the case. I would like to think that this is showing something that happened, but just remember, we're not necessarily working with a reliable narrator here. These are children's drawings after all. And that brings me to the mural element that probably is bugging me the most recently. All right. Assuming that this is showing the second world, why is Nika leading the forces into battle? It should be Joyboy, right? But we've seen also Joyboy in silhouette a couple of times now, and at least to me, that guy there, that ain't him. Like, that is how Nika is always depicted, the loincloth and like the flowing hair, which again leads me to ask an important question. Is Nika a real person? Well, no, of course he is. You just said that it's Nika being shown in the mural. But what if this is Joyboy? What if all the depictions of Nika are just Joyboy, and it's just that different cultures depict him slightly differently? Because some groups refer to Joyboy and then others to Nika, but it's kind of really rare that people ever talk about both figures. People who know Joyboy personally, for instance, like Emeth and Zunisha, call Luffy Joyboy. They're on the Joyboy hype train, but they've got nothing to say about Nika. Kaido and the Lunarians also talk about Joyboy. So do the fishmen, who we know were allied with Joyboy during the Void Century, him and Poseidon going way back and even writing big rocky letters to her. But then, other groups, like the Giants of Elbaf, or the Buccaneers, or the enslaved that prayed to the Warrior of Liberation for freedom, like Who's Who, talk about Nika specifically, never Joyboy. So could it be the case that these people are all talking about the same guy, that Joyboy is Nika, just from different perspectives? Or I could even see a world where it's multiple people, even more than two even, who are all conflated together as the sun god, but it's actually a group, which is why Elbaf seems to talk about multiple sun gods, all of them having different personalities and different stories and different interpretations, which again is exactly what Saul tells us before he reveals the Harley. Some of these are considered liberators, others destroyers, and others maybe, I don't know, are people like Buggy, who knows. One of the only times that Joyboy and Nika are directly compared are when Vegapunk is describing Joyboy, saying that he fought with a body that stretched and contracted like the sun god of the Elbaf legends. But even that doesn't necessarily mean they're different figures. Couldn't the history of Joyboy and those legends in Elbaf just both be referring to, again, the same guy? And even though I kind of personally don't like it, because I want Nika to be a real thing and I want the gods to be real and have this like whole separate age of legends in the first world, what kind of makes me go into this direction now of Nika and Joyboy being the same is how they talk about Nika and Elbaf. Specifically, I'm talking about one scene that makes me think that their Nika has to be Joyboy, because when they're talking about the previous user of the Nidhogg fruit, the war god, they show him fighting Nika in the past, but based on the fact that Imu knows Ragnir and the fact that the war god is confirmed to have eaten the Nidhogg devil fruit, which, again, I'm pretty sure were inventions of the second world, probably, maybe, the forest god sent forth the demons, but maybe not, I don't know, then this Nika just can't be the original Nika. This Nika would need to be Joyboy. It's also just super weird that Imu calls the squirrel Ragnir. Like, at this point, they should have met Ragnir and Ratatoskr, and they should have just been separate beings, but Imu doesn't call him Ratatoskr. He somehow knows that Ragnir is the squirrel. Also, of course, Imu is the person who, like, refers to both Joyboy and Nika weirdly. Like, what's going on? It's just that Elbafians always keep depicting Joyboy looking like this image of Nika rather than calling him by name. This warrior-style silhouette of Nika seems to be based on Elbaf's version, which is why he carries a more Elbafian vibe with his weapons and clothing. And again, that doesn't to me look the same as the Joyboy flashback silhouette we get in this arc as well, even when he's in Gear 5. But if Joyboy took a detour to Elbaf and, like Luffy, put on an Elbaf-style outfit, then I can maybe see it. I don't know. But you know what I mean, right? Like, this looks nothing like this. And since the mural is drawn in Elbaf, we get a Joyboy leading the army that looks just like Elbaf's idea of the sun god Nika. It's kind of like a real-world god that you may have heard of before. Ever heard of Jesus? Sure you have. He was this Middle Eastern bloke worshipped as the Messiah by Christianity, like a small group of people in the world. However, most European Christians have traditionally depicted him as looking like this white European dude that is smoking a little bit too much weed, despite his actual lineage and geographic location. You know, him just being a Middle Eastern man and looked nothing like this guy here. Definitely. My point here being, before I get lost in this, is that many cultures end up depicting their deities in their own cultural context, and in this same way, the Elbafians may depict Nika as looking like a warrior from Elbaf, even though Joyboy was from the Great Kingdom and probably rocked a completely different style. And because Luffy is currently fighting on Elbaf, his achievements too will probably go down as more legends of Nika. It's kind of like Luffy on Wano. The citizens of Wano don't actually know that it was Luffy who saved Wano. He didn't take any credit for it. He didn't want any credit. Instead, Momo let the people know that Joyboy had come and saved them. And so the biggest question right now for me is, did Elbaf nickname Joyboy as Nika because they already had that legend and concept of the legendary sun god? Or potentially did they name Joyboy Nika because it's the onomatopoeia for a smile in Japan and the dude was always smiling and laughing, a very joyful boy basically? Or did all the legends of the sun god actually grow out of Joyboy to begin with? Could Nika or Joyboy actually just be a title the same way that Straw Hat is a title for Luffy? After all, Joyboy doesn't really feel like a real name that a responsible parent would give their kids. If you're naming your kid Joyboy, don't. It seems a lot more like a description or a title, right? He's the boy who brings the joy, which also, again, not... Alright, let's move on from this. Doesn't sound great. Was he actually, though? Or was he? Like, was Joyboy maybe actually just a straight-up fraud, right? Again, there is no mention of a sun god in the actual second world part of the Harley text when Joyboy was living. And the sun gods that are mentioned in the first and third world are in quotation marks, so are they just as much the sun god as Road or Loki are when they declare themselves to be sun god? Or, like Luffy, was he never trying to be a sun god and it was just a title that people like the Albathians just started throwing onto him while he was just trying to live his life? Or is it because Luffy's not the sun god but the moon god, or there is like a different real sun god but there is like this other character that pretends to be the sun? Like, again, you see why I'm struggling with all of these things. I'm really hoping you guys have some good thoughts for this in the comments. I can't wait to dive in and read your thoughts. But also, the sun god allegations are just not the only problem that I have with the world's first ever pirate, because I told you that this arc has me questioning everything at this point. And here is one of the biggest questions of all for you. Did Joyboy actually have a devil fruit? I mean, you'd think so, right? We all have just been assuming it. That's what it says on the One Piece wiki, so it must be right. But I actually looked back all over the freaking series. I looked back at the Gorosei's comments when Luffy first awakened his fruit. I looked back at Vegapunk's entire message, and maybe I'm missing something here. By all means, please tell me if I am. But as far as I can tell, I don't think the text anywhere actually states ever that Joyboy ate the Nika fruit, officially canonically established. First up, the Gorosei's comments. They don't mention Joyboy whatsoever, only that the fruit is named after the sun god Nika and gives a user a rubbery body, and they specifically mention that they have been hunting it for over 800 years and it has not been awakened since then. And the implication, I think, that all of us collectively just ran with was that Joyboy must have awakened the fruit 800 years ago, because people keep comparing Luffy to Joyboy. When he awakens his fruit, Zanisha is like, oh, it's Joyboy. But what if no one actually ever awakened it? Like, could it be that Luffy is just the first person to ever do so, and that the fruit has only existed for 800 years from the end of the Void Century? But then, of course, Vegapunk does say that Joyboy did fight with a rubbery body, so that means he did eat the fruit then, no? Again, the thing though here is we still do not know the real origin of devil fruits. My guess is that they were invented in the advanced civilization of the Great Kingdom, like I mentioned, but if most mythological zones are actually designed after creatures or gods that literally actually did exist at some point in history, then what if this fruit wasn't based on a prior god named Nika? What if the fruit was just based on Joyboy himself? Or did Joyboy create this fruit based on a legendary Nika that just never actually existed in history ever and instead was just a creation out of people's imagination, like a story, a legend that then became reality when people dreamt like they wanted to be like the gods? Since we do not know what actually happened at all in the first world, could that destroyed world and the Forbidden Sun be like a massive nuclear allegory by Oda? Could Joyboy and other figures have been given powers like Bruce Banner style? Or maybe Mr. Fantastic is actually like the better comparison here because he's stretchy, right? And then with their advanced technology, maybe they were able to extract their powers off their spirits themselves and pass them along. I mean, it would be the craziest possibility since we see characters in One Piece use crazy unexplained powers all the time without using any devil fruit. And another Joyboy possibility, another way that he might actually be a fraud, maybe he wasn't a warrior of liberation, maybe he was very much a destroyer, much like that other aspect of Nika that Albath talks about all the time. The Harley does say the sun spread the flames or horrors of war and I do think that could be referring to the Forbidden Sun. So did Joyboy maybe do something to make things even worse by displaying like a Luffy level of intelligence and just saying something like, the people of the world are sure warring a lot over the Forbidden Sun. I know how to stop that war, and then just destroyed the Forbidden Sun, plunging the world into darkness and immediately allowing Imu to take over everything instead. That then would leave the world without sun, in need of a new dawn. But again, maybe Luffy is not a god, or is not that god. Maybe him and Joyboy and Nika were all just strong guys or heroes whose legends got blown out of proportion, and maybe Luffy is just inheriting that mantle, being called the next Joyboy or the next Nika, but has nothing to do with being a sun god, or there's like a different person who's secretly the sun god, and Luffy and Joyboy and Nika are just like pretenders who were like supporting the original sun god, like a sun goddess. We talked about that idea before. Or has everything just to do with Luffy carrying the will of D instead, which at this point might stand for Dozan. And to be honest, I have no idea who or what Dozan is, but boy do I have so many ideas for what it might be, and I just covered all these options I talked about in this video right here. You should check it out very much. Let me know, please, what your thoughts are. I am immensely confused at this point, and thanks to our Patreons, I'll see you in the next video.